Hello and welcome to Geek Speak with Envision IT, a podcast for business leaders and technology experts that like to stay on top of the latest security news and listen to interviews with insightful industry leaders. I'm Bill Crane, Chief Stakeholder Architect and CTO at Envision IT. Let's get started. Hello and welcome everybody. Today we are going to talk a little bit about VPNs. They're very popular at the moment, and there's a lot of question around the right way to use them or not. And we have with us today Adi Trivedi, and Adi is a Citrix Principal Sales Engineer for Citrix. So welcome.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
So maybe you could, before we get started on the VPN discussion, maybe you could give us a little bit of background about yourself and what you do for Citrix.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Adi Trivedi, and I've been with Citrix for about 9 years running now. I've worn a few different hats at Citrix, mainly in consulting services at Citrix and in my pre-sales engineering role. Most recently, my role is that of a principal sales engineer. So I work with some of Citrix's largest customers in the Chicagoland area and helping them design their overall Citrix delivery solution from a pre-sales capacity. So we try to problem solve as much as possible, try to figure out which is the right solution for our customers in a given scenario based on what their initiatives are. Great.
And here at Envision, we've worked alongside of you for a long time, and it's certainly been a pleasure. And something that was great was an article you had published on the use of VPNs. I believe it was called To VPN or Not to VPN. And we thought, well, that is really timely because we see a lot of companies, over the last few months, really scrambling to deal with the work from home. And a lot of them kind of turn to VPNs because that's, maybe their select number of users or their IT staff had used VPNs. So they thought, well, this is maybe a solution for everyone. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about, the main points of your article and what your thoughts are on the VPN.
Yeah, sure thing. And yeah, Bill, it's been a pleasure to partner with yourself and the rest of the Envision team at many different accounts and on many different occasions. It's always a pleasure to work with everyone.
Oh, thank you.
On the topic of the blog itself, right? So this is actually a second blog written on the exact same topic and with the exact same title from Citrix. So my prestigious colleague by the name of Brian Manath, who I think you also know,
oh, you bet.
Had written the first one. And he had talked quite a bit about to VPN or not to VPN in a different context. The purpose of writing this blog specifically was to highlight the challenges that we face in these times as we embrace the new normal and expect most of our workforce to stay at home and work from home. And traditionally, VPN has always been perceived as the be-all, end-all solution for delivering any kind of remote access to end users. Now, of course, Citrix has several solutions that also provide remote access, but so far, the customers perceive Citrix virtual apps and desktops as a solution to provide app-specific or VDI-specific remote access solutions. Don't necessarily look at Citrix as the provider of remote access when you are talking about simple VPN, even though we do have a VPN solution tightly integrated into our Citrix ADC platform.
Right.
So the purpose of this blog was to help customers navigate through a decision chart as to what makes the most sense depending on what they really need for their remote access strategy. And also because we're talking in 2020, where before the pandemic hit, companies started asking their employees to stay at home and work from home. Most of our customers were asking us about revisiting the VPN in general as their chosen remote access strategy, because they were looking to kind of make their environment and their remote access strategy a little more current with the times. Right? VPN, when first it was introduced, it was introduced, I think, in the 1980s and early 1990s, where it started becoming kind of the default standard for providing remote access. But that was 30 years ago, right? And I think some of these remote access strategies surely need to be evolved there needs to be a second look at that strategy, partially because we also live in a completely different threat landscape today versus before.
Right.
And by that, I mean, the requirements from a remote access strategy need to be made current, where the types of attacks seen on various different companies have also evolved with time. Right, a lot of companies are looking at zero trust network access as a replacement for VPN, and Citrix has a pretty strong remote access story with the zero trust network access. In fact, most of the traditional Citrix solutions have been built upon that foundation of moving on with providing remote access to applications and to desktops with absolutely no trust rendered to the end user unless their identity is proven, unless their device posture is checked. And that leads us to what I have written in that blog. As applications have evolved, as the threat landscape has changed, as technologies have become more prone to different kinds of attacks, as the threat vectors have also evolved, VPN has surfaced as one of the most vulnerable solutions, if not the most vulnerable solution within a company's IT infrastructure. So does VPN still have a place in 2020? Yes, absolutely it does. But should the overall number of users that leverage VPN as a remote access strategy reduce? 100% without a doubt. And that's the whole purpose of coming up with some sort of a decision tree that helps customers navigate through all those decision points. Because let's face it, we all work with customers that have a very wide range of use cases, have a very wide range of applications, and even applications, right? The traditional client-server applications, where Citrix Virtual Apps was the chosen solution to deliver them remotely and securely, are also transforming. And a lot of customers are moving towards applications that were traditionally within their data center confines. Applications are moving to the cloud. And even the way in which these applications are consumed by the end users are also evolving towards more of a webified SaaS model. So different sets of solutions need to be reconsidered or need to be evaluated if they're looking at kind of evolving their overall remote access strategy to make it more current in the 2020 times, especially now that the attack surface has grown more than ever before, with most customers or most users at customers staying at home and working from home.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to think about. And like you said, there's even within one customer, there's dozens of use cases, if not more. And having users, maybe navigate to different places depending on what app they're going to use could be kind of confusing. Maybe you could give us just a quick example of maybe where VPN does make sense, or maybe where something else makes sense.
Yeah, sure thing. So again, in the blog with the decision tree, what I've tried to highlight is that we need to pay attention to the applications. We need to first understand the segmentation of users at a customer, because that'll help us determine which applications should even be exposed to which different users. Because let's face it, when you give a user a VPN access, you're kind of making them a part of your corporate network. Right. Even if you're running things like split tunneling, even when you're enabling some posture checks, but after the VPN tunnel has been established, you are making that end user's device and their connection a part of their corporate network. So there are several different considerations to keep in mind. When is it safe to put VPN? There needs to be an analysis of the user's identity at the very beginning. So if a user belongs to finance or HR, just to use a couple examples, maybe they don't need to be a part of the company network. Maybe they just need access to those finance or HR applications. And that's what they were hired to do. And that's what makes them productive. So maybe they don't necessarily need to access network file share drives, or they don't need to get access to those network segments that potentially could have company relevant data. So those are not good candidates for VPN.
Got it.
But if the customer's end user is accessing requires access to their applications and to their data from a trusted device, there is a proper analysis done on what the user's AD group membership is. Accordingly, they're segmented into a secure network within their corporate network, within the company's corporate network. There are firewall rules that specifically block out those network segments from being able to talk to network segments that contain applications that the end users don't need and that contain the data that may be deemed sensitive for the enterprise and should not possibly make its way into the end user's device. We should also pay attention to the overall security of the device, which means, is the device domain joined or not? Is the device company owned or not? Is there proper hard drive encryption on the device? Is there a proper antivirus software running on the device itself? Is there any level of device management configured for those corporate devices? If the answer to all of those questions is yes, then possibly VPN is the right approach for that segment of users. If the answer to any of these questions is no, then it absolutely makes no sense to enable VPN. And I forgot an important one. We also need to make sure that even after the VPN tunnel is connected, you're not bringing in bad stuff from outside into your corporate network, which means you need to apply certain policies to make sure that peripherals are blocked, which means making sure that users are not able to copy and paste data into their local device after the VPN tunnels are established. So these are just some examples on what kinds of decision points need to be considered before enabling VPN.
Yeah, those are some great examples for sure. So the idea is, you certainly may have a use case where it does make sense, but you surely better make sure, you got the proper segmentation, you do some endpoint analysis to make sure that, that's just not, any device, out on the internet trying to connect it. It's actually a known trusted device that, is in compliance with your policies.
Yeah. And I think there's an important element. So what we talked about so far are the decision points that the business needs to make on when to allow VPN. But even after making a decision on whether VPN is, if VPN is indeed enabled for those end users, then there are some decision points that are around the technology aspect of deploying VPN, other than what we just talked about, right? So do we know, and customers need to investigate how far is their VPN going to scale. So maybe VPN is working well for a certain customer because only a subset of the workforce is using it. If you're going to have the entire workforce working remotely, will your existing VPN solution scale for you?
Right.
And have you considered the impact of scaling up that VPN in your network, which may require adding firewalls, adding switches, licenses for VPN, and adding bandwidth? And are VPN vendors suggesting you to move towards cloud-based solution? And do you have the time to vet that out before you enable that at scale?
Right.
So that's the first question, right? There's the second question I would have for a customer who chooses to move down the VPN route is, have you thought about what rules are in place to prevent the impact of wide-scale VPN deployment on your end user experience? Because VPNs are traditionally not very user-friendly. It may be easy to deploy from an IT standpoint, but they're not necessarily very user-friendly. So some users may not have a corporate issued device, and their personal device may be unsupported. So they may not be able to run that VPN client. From a performance standpoint, once the VPN tunnel has been established, traditional client-server applications that have extensive bandwidth requirements using native protocols will quickly overload VPNs and the network pipes. So as the network latency increases, the application responsiveness degrades, resulting in an inconsistent and sometimes unusable user experience. VPN performance also has a very high dependence on optimal network conditions at the end user side, which takes performance and end users experience out of IT's control. So they need to test how does VPN perform on unreliable wireless networks. We don't have a kid yet, but I'm sure many of our customers and their end users have kids and busy households with their spouses also working from home. There's an increase in streaming traffic, and all of those points that are out of IT's control will have an impact on how productive the end users are and how their end user experience is. Because guess what? Not everyone has a network admin at home. Even when split tunneling is turned off, all the traffic to SaaS applications will now be traversing your corporate network, increasing the overall traffic and likely adding network congestion. So are you making sure that the traffic going out to SaaS applications, one, is outside of that VPN tunnel? And two, if it is outside, then how are you making sure that you're not getting malicious traffic into your corporate network via access to those SaaS applications and other methods of accessing publicly facing websites? And the third, the third question I would have is, have you thought about the security challenges that this brings? So consider the possible breaches and non-compliance issues. So think of a company-owned device with VPN and endpoint protection turned on when you take the device home. Is that a potential HIPAA violation if you're a healthcare end user or an end user that works for a healthcare company, and depending on what data is accessible? Compliance inside and outside the company premises requires consistent attention to security. And VPN is operationally challenging in those scenarios where potential data exfiltration source is pretty much anywhere on your device, and anytime you have your device that is also able to access the public internet. The last one, and again, this also is an important one that often gets ignored, is that VPNs are very complex to set up. They may be easy to deploy on company managed devices, but installing and configuring and managing them for widespread use across the variety of users in the environment and across a variety of different types of devices, that could be a problem area as well.
Yeah, that's very helpful. As you're discussing some of the challenges with VPN, I can't help to think a little bit about what Citrix has been talking a lot about lately, which is zero trust. And when you look at, that kind of a security model, VPNs really, they just don't fit that very well, right?
Yeah, VPN is the complete antithesis of a zero trust security model.
Right.
So, again, a shameless plug for another blog that I have written, where you can use Citrix technologies, and specifically with Citrix Workspace, you can approach a zero trust security model, where I begin to explain the advent of zero trust. But not to bore you a lot, but there was a Forrester report written about zero trust and a possible way of rethinking the overall remote access strategy, where trust is not assigned, it's earned.
Right.
And one of the first implementers of that zero trust security model was Google, where they pioneered a security model called Beyond Corp to separate application access from network access. And they had a heavy emphasis on user authentication and device validation. And this particular model was intended to replace their corporate VPN, which they now have done successfully. And the design was based on viewing security inside the network versus outside in. And this particular model was popularized further when content delivery networks like Akamai, Experience, and NationState, sponsored attack around 2010 and began rethinking their design strategies to something similar to what Google implemented. The zero trust security model, just to kind of also bust some myths here, is not a single technology. It's an evolving set of security paradigms. It draws on strong authentication, orchestration, analytics, encryption, risk scoring, file system permission-based policy, enforcement. And a core tenet of this zero trust security model is privileged access management, where users have just-in-time access and just enough access to complete a given task. So that ties the user experience directly to security. So for all those reasons that I just stated before, right, everything that is explained about the zero trust model, they're all reasons for why VPN is a complete antithesis to a zero trust security model.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One last thing I wanted to touch on with you, Adi, is in your article you talked about, maybe an alternative, and what certainly people are looking at and talking about is digital workspaces. I was wondering if you could touch on that for us.
Yeah, sure. So, if you're using your customers, or you're using Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops and Citrix ADC to deliver web and non-web applications, you'll want to take a hard look at N-factor authentication and conditional authentication, and features like smart access and smart control policies for conditional access. So you have a situationally aware access mechanism for all your Citrix users. When you expand upon that concept and introduce other internet and internet-based applications, SaaS applications being one example, you can enforce your governance policies that are consistent with that Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops environment that you already may be using our services like Access Control Service, Secure Browser Service, Citrix Gateway Service, to enforce data exfiltration policies like clipboard control, printer access control, watermark enforcement, app protection policies to make sure that any screen grabbing is not allowed, to make sure that keyloggers, if present on the system, are not able to steal data that is being either typed into an application or a virtual, whether it's virtual web or SaaS, you're making sure that the text captured by those keyloggers is also garbled, right? So the high-level concept of Citrix Workspace is to provide that single point to control all security policies and also provide access to all these different types of applications. Let's not forget data, right? Because Citrix Workspace can also be leveraged as a launch pad for accessing data that could be stored on various different storage locations. So that means if data is stored either on a OneDrive for Business or SharePoint Online or your network shared drives, or Box, or name the data source, or even Citrix Share-File, right? If your data could be located on any of these different kinds of storage locations, Citrix Workspace becomes that central point from where you can get access to all these kinds of data along with all the other applications. And by the way, VDI. So that's the underlying concept of what Citrix Workspace is. It's really an expansion on something that has been a mature part of our solution for a very long time. So right. It's taken in. It's expanded upon all those different types of security policies that were enforced, and taken it one more level for the customers that are looking to deploy some sort of mobile device management strategy or mobile application management strategy. Citrix can help there as well, and that is a part of the overall Citrix Workspace app solution. So Citrix Workspace is has a single consistent look and feel regardless of the type of the devices. And if you are accessing Citrix Workspace from a mobile device, or even from a device like a Windows 10 or Mac OS or iOS type, iOS running devices like iPads, or Android running devices like your smartphones or your tablets or whatever, you can not only manage those devices, but if you choose to not manage any of those devices and go with a BYO model, you can still deploy mobile applications securely on those types of endpoints. So that takes, that completes our overall solution. But to just add the final, nail on the head with what makes our Citrix Workspace solution zero trust design ready is Citrix Analytics, which offers a dashboard to help you understand user-specific baselines, as well as changing user behavior, device trust, and network conditions making your platform context aware and conditionally accurate. Because Citrix Analytics helps you preemptively adjust security policies to these changing conditions while offering just-in-time protection using our closed-loop analytics platform. And that's a core tenet of the Zero Trust security model. This enhanced visibility and automated policy enforcement is essential to ensuring preemptive identification and continuous assessment of threats and securing your end users' applications, desktops, files, devices, while keeping the performance and user productivity from suffering.
Yeah, I think that's key. A lot of times in the past, we've seen, high security type systems be, very troubling for users to use. I think that's quite opposite with what Citrix has been doing forever. But now it's just kind of all come together. Like you said, it's one place for a user to go, whether they've been at the company 20 years or they're brand new. It's one place for a user to go, get access to everything they need, like you said, the files, the apps, the virtual desktops. And even more exciting is now, some of the intelligence and what Citrix is doing with, intelligent feeding into that architecture as well is really exciting.
Absolutely.
I was just going to mention one thing that does come up when we talk to customers. When we look at the digital workspace and what Citrix is doing there, how does that work for maybe customers that, maybe they have a cloud strategy, but maybe they're not there yet, so they still have some on-premises stuff. Can the two work together?
Absolutely. I mean, the Workspace platform was designed for a hybrid cloud design. We understand that most of our customers are not going to overnight flip the switch off on their on-premises data center and go to cloud. We expect most customers to have a combination of on-premises as well as cloud-hosted workloads. And again, it comes down to choice, where customers just need to have, we offer the customers the maximum amount of choice as to how much to consume the cloud and how much and how quickly they want to start consuming cloud. Because most of our customers do have a cloud first strategy, which translates to customers wanting to put their new workloads on cloud first and then see if it's not a feasible idea, then bring them back in on premises. Many customers are also looking at moving some of their simpler workloads like web-based applications and VDI on cloud, but still keeping their traditional business critical legacy or applications that have that 3-tiered application model with web app and database. They want to keep them on premises. Now, they may not be ready to move those applications to the cloud today, but maybe 5 years down the road, after those applications have evolved over time, they may be cloud ready. So the overall, everything we've touched upon so far could have a hybrid footprint when it comes to moving customers to cloud. So then customers can, gradually choose to consume, the cloud more and reduce their consumption of their on-premises data center to gradually eliminate their on-premises footprint and move towards more of a, operationally simplified cloud-based model. So everything that I just mentioned absolutely can be extended to a hybrid cloud model.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, Adi, thank you so much. This has been really, really helpful. It is definitely a hot topic, so we really appreciate you taking some time today and explaining this to us.
I'm glad you found some value in it, Bill, and I'm sure we'll continue the conversation as things continue to evolve. So happy to partner with you guys again. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to expand our audience and going into this very interesting topic into more detail. So thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any questions or you have future topics you'd like us to cover, please connect with us via the link in the show notes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time on Geek Speak with Envision IT.